Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Students for Political Engagement. Today, we're talking with Hayden Lai, who is running for YRDSB Student Trustee for the 2024 to 2025 school year. So, to start us off, Hayden, do you want to give an introduction of yourself?
Sounds great. So my name is Hayden. I'm running to be your student trustee. I come from the central region. That's where I first won. And I'm a student at Dr. G.W. Williams, and I'm running to be your student trustee. I'm in the pool of the final four candidates. I'm very passionate about student voice. My top two platform points are one, democracy and student voice, and two, it's later school start times. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good, Hayden. So you kind of answered this question already in your introduction, but what's inspired you to seek out this position as student trustee?
Yeah, so I'm really passionate about student voice and democracy. In grade nine in October, I actually wrote out a whole policy document in advance when I wasn't eligible to run. I made a whole policy document about what I wanted to run on. And over the past year or so, I've been able to develop that and improve on it. And it looks like what my policies are today. And I'm just overall very passionate about democracy. I feel like democracy is the number one way to push the policies that we want to see within the board. And I believe that we need to protect that democracy. We need to prevent teacher interference in elections. We need to make sure that there are roots, and we need to prevent bureaucracy from preventing students from being able to advocate for themselves.
Very interesting, very true as well. I would agree. So in addition, so what qualifications and what positions in your past have you had, and what experience do you have that you think makes you suitable as a student trustee if you become elected?
That's a great question. I believe I have a lot of experience to bring to the table. I know that you guys are the students for political engagement. I love politics. I actually have the Charter of Rights and Freedoms on my wall. Um, I've been on over 15 political campaigns, campaigning for different politicians in my area. I've volunteered for even actual trustees in the election because I want to advocate for the policies that I want to see within the board. I've also been on FCSS. FCSS is the largest youth-led and youth-focused charity in Canada. We're focused on the interests of secondary students. The full name is Federation for Canadian Secondary Students. I'm the policy and governance officer. I manage the different policies that we propose. Moreover, um, what else? I've also been an intern for an MPP Caroline Mulrooney. I was in her office and I helped her out. I worked with different constituents. I got to meet a lot of cool people, and I'm really grateful for that opportunity. I have a lot more other things, like for example, I've also served on my student council where I've advocated for numerous things. I've also been on the York Region President's Council, which works directly with the student trustee. So I think that will be a very transferable skill.
All right, thank you, Hayden. So, now going into something you already talked about a bit, your policy platform for what you want to see happen when you become student trustee. So, one of the things you mentioned was, implementing democracy and making sure that students' voices are represented by like their teachers, for instance. So do you want to elaborate on that a bit?
Sounds great. And I agree with you. It does sound a bit vague, but to put this in actualization, the board actually does have policies that mandate democratic student councils. It's policy 672, and it mandates that all student councils must be democratic. However, this isn't absolutely clear and it isn't directly enforced. We have many student councils that aren't absolutely democratic. Not all positions are democratic, or there may be a percentage of the vote that goes to teachers. For example, at my school, there was a constitutional amendment to change it so that the voting for the president would have 33% of the vote for teachers. Now, I thought, well, this goes against board policies, and I campaigned heavily against this, and it did not pass, luckily. So this is what I want to see on a wider scale. I want to make sure that student elections are protected. I want to make sure that teachers don't interfere in elections. Moreover, another issue that I often see, especially with the more northern schools where there are smaller student populations, is that not enough students are running. Right, we see that many students are being acclaimed to their positions, and yes, I think it's already great enough that these students are getting the positions they want, that we have an area for them to advocate for themselves. But I believe that not enough students running is a large issue, right? That means that you can't vote. or effectively that your vote is only a vote of confidence, and those usually come out in huge majorities. We need to have competitive races to make sure that actual great candidates run, and I'm sure that everyone that runs is great, but we need to make sure that students have the right to vote. So my main focus is looking at how we can enforce this rule, policy 672, which is already enumerated by the York Region District School Board. But I also want to look at how we can continue to strengthen that. I believe that democracy is not only the right to vote, but also how we can strengthen it. I mean, for example, Russia is a democracy technically, right? You can vote, but is it truly a real liberal democracy? No, it's an illiberal democracy. We need to make sure that these votes matter. We need to make sure that there isn't interference in these elections and that candidates can fairly run and that these candidates aren't being blocked by teachers to run.
Yeah, but I think that's pretty good, and I think it's a very pressing issue with facing a lot of YRDSC schools. Like at my school, um, some positions in our student council are chosen by the teachers without like student input. So I think it is a very pressing issue that's facing the board. But I think I just want to like a little bit of clarification on like the part you said about acclamation, because like if a person's acclaimed, that means like nobody else wants to run for their position. So how would you, ensure participation so that acclamations happen less?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I first want to start off by saying that I think that acclamations aren't absolutely negative. I think that's probably a later stage once we do ensure that all student councils are truly, purely democratic. But as a later stage and to continue to improve that, we need to prevent acclamations from happening. Now, as you say, how do we do this? I say that we need to make sure that people know about student council. I feel like, for example, at my school, some of the students on student council this year didn't even know about student council the previous year. They only ran because they found out about student council this year, meaning that I don't necessarily think it's an issue about people wanting to or not wanting to run. I feel like there are a lot of people that want to run for student council, but they don't know about student council or don't know how to run for student council, or there are huge roadblocks in the way for them. For example, if the application window isn't long enough, or if there are huge roadblocks that don't even matter. For example, on my student council, we removed this. You have to write a paragraph or something or an essay and get signatures from different people. But in the end, this isn't shown to other people. It's just an extra roadblock from getting students to actually run. It's an extra gatekeeper. We need to make sure that we remove those and make sure that students can actually run on their free will.
All right, thank you, Hayden. So I think the next question is sort of related to what you were talking about, which is like awareness of like student politics. And I think another issue in the YRDSB is not that many students know about this position of student trustee, which you're running for. Like when I go to talk with a lot of my friends, like they don't know what the student trustee is or what the position does. So how do you think, you as student trustee or the board in general can mitigate that problem and make people more aware of what the role of student trustee does?
Thank you. I think that's actually a very pressing issue. Many students I've talked to don't know about what student trustee is, and I think that's perfectly valid, right? This is a very niche position that not many students may know about. But I think that the way we can solve this is by setting an example, right? We need to be very, very accessible. I want to be the student trustee that's known to be very accessible. I want to make it so that if anybody wants to reach me, they can, right? You can go to my Instagram or follow my campaign, Hayden.YRDSB or Hayden Lai 445, my personal account. You can text me. I'm happy to have a conversation with you on anything that you want. It doesn't have to be about student trustee, but I just want to remain accessible, right? And an example I can show you is a former student trustee, former YRDSB student trustee. He went to my school, Bruce. A few years ago, he was a student trustee, and I think a lot of students know about him, even if they may not know about the role of student trustee. Well, in grade 12, a lot of them probably know about Bruce or when he was running, and I think a big factor of that was that he actually tried, right? He actually tried to make sure that students were connected with the student trustee. He posted about snow days before the actual YRDSB Twitter account did. He actually connected with students, and I want to replicate that. I'm actually already working on this, purchase the domain. I want to make it so that students can access like a website, my personal website, easily contact me and see the accomplishments that I've done. I also, on the issue of social media, I don't want to be that person that just posts during campaigns. And I find that kind of annoying, right? We only hear about them once every year. and then they come back a year later asking us to vote for them again. And I think that's frankly ridiculous. We need to see constant posting by them, and obviously not to in annoying amount, but just so that, for example, if board meetings happen every month, I want to see what did you do that month. I want to see how are you getting closer to the goals that you set. How are you achieving those goals that you set in your platform? Those are the answers I want to see. I want to be known as the student trustee that was the most accessible student trustee that you've ever seen. So yeah, that's how I solve that issue.
Yes, thank you. And I think that was a very good answer. So, obviously, democratization is one of the major planks of your platform. So, what are some other planks of your platform that you think students should know about?
That's a great question. Now, firstly, I believe in democracy. Second, I believe in later school start times. Now, I understand that many previous student trustees have advocated for this and haven't been able to get this done. But I think that with enough push, and I may not necessarily be able to do this, but with enough push and enough consecutive student trustees elected on this same platform point, we can get this done. I believe that it's frankly ridiculous that even though most experts agree that the current school times are unreasonable for students' bodies, and we're basically just setting up students for failure. If the science says that students aren't meant to wake up at this time, why are we making them go to school at this time? The YRDSB is setting students up for failure and not questioning why they aren't doing well. I believe that we need to make schools start later so that we can make it so that students are ready to learn and teachers can better teach. Now, how do we do this? I believe that we can. There are a lot of roadblocks. For example, we share transportation with the York Catholic District School Board. We share busing, meaning that it will require communication with them. It will also require lots of push on the board level. Now, you may know this, but a student trustees don't actually have a vote on the board itself. We only get to sit on the board and mention things from now and then and meet the trustees. We don't actually have real power. But I believe with enough organization, with enough working with the actual trustees that sit on the board, we can actually get real change to be done. Now, you must be saying, well, that sounds kind of ridiculous. You might just be saying whatever you want to get my vote. I don't think so. I think it's realistic to get this done. For example, I mentioned Bruce. I think Bruce is a very good example of this. He was able to mobilize the board of trustees, despite not having a position. He made it so that he could push policy 672. He was the one that helped implement this, mandating student councils. But I believe that we need to further this. I believe that this may sound unrealistic, but I really feel like we can get this done. Now, you may be asking, what are some other positions I have? I believe that we need to value merit and we need to value mental health. A big issue with this is the stigmatization. We need to make sure that this isn't being stigmatized, so it's very easy to talk about. Now, the reason why I focus so much on democracy is because everything links back to it. You may mention yesterday we actually had our debate panel, and something that I acknowledged about it is that most candidates that were debating mentioned things that all link back to democracy. One candidate mentioned mental health workshops. I think that's a great idea, but that links back to democracy. I strongly believe in the phrase, don't give a man a fish, teach a man how to fish. We shouldn't just give out random policies and say, oh, you should be happy with this. I got this done for you. But instead, make it so that there's a route forward, because let's be realistic. A student trustee's term is about 8 months. That isn't a lot of time to get something done. Why don't we work to make it so that it's very easy to create change, right? We need to make sure that there are straight routes towards democracy and policy advocacy. So yeah, I think that that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you so much for that as well. Now, within that question, just as a follow-up, you mentioned that you would like to see more collaboration with certain other district school boards, such as the Catholic District School Board. So my question to you is, I agree that there are certain benefits, such as with transportation, etc. But to what extent should we be collaborating, do you think, considering that if there's an issue with one board, this may spill over to the other board as well, such as, for example, transportation, and this may be an issue which comes around.
Yeah, I really agree with that point. I do believe that there are certain issues with this, and there may be a certain extent to which this should go. But the extent that I think that this should be used in very extenuating circumstances, for example, when it's necessary. Now, I tell you about transportation, and you mentioned this in your question. In the issue of transportation, it's not really an option. It would be a necessity since we do already share busing with the York Catholic Board. This is a necessity. It's not really a choice about whether you want to or not want to go. But now, on the issue of collaborating with other boards, I think that's also pretty important on the student leadership level. I believe it's important to share the ideas that we have, but not to the extent to which issues are spilling over onto our board. For example, there are many other boards that are undemocratic that have fully interviewed positions, which I don't agree with. But for example, on the York Region President's Council, we're currently we're in the works of working with other boards, right, to see to make an event where we can have representatives from both boards collaborate with each other and see each other and communicate the ideas that we've been seeing on the same level, and seeing what works on their board, what works on their student councils, and see what will work on our board. And then we already see this on a more micro level. For example, the York Region President's Council, which works heavily with the Student Trustee. Now, I had the pleasure over the past year of working with those, with working with the YRPC. I'm on the YRPC, but even before that, right? Even when I didn't have a position, I went every single month to every single YRPC meeting, even if it was like a 45-minute drive. I went to those meetings and I discussed with other students, and there's a lot of valuable insight. For example, at my school, we're very huge on democracy, mostly. But I learned that other schools don't really have this huge value. And I got to learn about the policies that I want to see pushed. I think that as a candidate, what I bring to the table is that I have the experience and I've actually worked on the YRPC. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does, and thank you so much for that. Now, of course, you've mentioned a lot that you've been on the YRPC for a long duration of time, etc. But given that next year we're going to have new people incumbent into the YRPC, etc., do you have any plans you'd like to, or any advice you'd like to give to these new incumbent individuals as they come into the YRPC? Or are there any ideas you'd like to give, or anything you'd like to say to just inspire them for their year ahead?
Well, yeah, I think that YRPC is a great opportunity to share your voice. I want all students of the YRDSB to go to these GAs regularly. I think that they're a great opportunity to share your ideas. For example, we talk about huge ideas. For example, at the last student outreach meeting, we talked about how the budget should be allocated. I think that's a huge issue. Some students talked about how we should allocate this towards mental health. Some students talked about how we should allocate this towards club funds. I think that this is a great way to be able to share your ideas. Now, for the people that are entering YRPC, the new people, I think that the number one thing that you should be focused on is advocating for the students. Because to be honest, at at a representative level, you aren't going to be able to push specific policies, but you are going to be able to advocate for people's voices. You're able to be students' megaphones. For example, you aren't able to advocate on a specific policy, but rather you're able to advocate on the policies that are brought up every single month, see which topics are going to be evaluated every month, and make sure that these events happen smoothly. I think that the biggest role of the YRPC isn't to push a specific ideology or a specific policy or set of policies, but rather to support and facilitate student conversation and student democracy and student advocacy. So what I'd say to the next group of YRPC students is not to focus so much on those minute details in policy that they want to see, those niche things in policy that not everyone might know about, but rather the facilitation of conversation, which I really think is a superpower within the board. I think that's very important for us to have students that actually get to have roots to discuss the policies that we want to see.
All right, thank you. And we've covered a bit of stuff in this interview, like your platform and what you think you want to do in the years ahead. So, do you have any like final remarks that you'd like to say in the interview?
Sure. So just as a reminder to all students, voting starts on Tuesday. I believe that it's very important that you vote. It takes probably 2 seconds. All you have to do is check your GAPS email, click on the link, and then go see it, go through all the candidates, make your choices, and then vote. Now, one thing I'd like to tell you is that you have to vote for two people. Now, I hope that one of those is me. Now, let's say that one of your friends is running. I'm also running, so you can vote for two people. So you have two spaces out of the four people that are running. Hopefully, I can be one of those people. Now, voting lasts from Tuesday, February 22nd, and ends on February 24th. That's the window that you can vote, and make sure to check your GAPS account there. Make sure to also check my Instagram account, which is hayden.yrdsb, or my personal account, Hayden Lai 445, where you can text me on anything or follow my account to stay updated with the campaign or see what I'm up to, see what kind of policies I'm advocating for, and see if I'm the right candidate for you. As I talked about, I think democracy is very important, and I don't think that you should be voting students based off like how they look, how what position their name is on the ballot, but rather the policies that they're advocating for. I feel like it's very important for you to look at all candidates, not just me, but other candidates as well. But in the end, I really hope that you can mark one of those ballots as Hayden. I feel like I've shown myself to be a very firm believer in student voice, student democracy, and I think that I've stayed very true to that commitment, and I want to continue to do so. I hope that you can vote me for student trustee, follow my campaign, and thank you so much, Matthew and Shoria. I hope I'm saying that right.
Yep, that's right.
Thank you so much for hosting me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Hayden. And I think we'll end it there for today.